Hello, and welcome to the Daily AI Show. On today's episode, we're asking the question, what should happen and what does it mean when AI goes off script? Is it a bug? Is control an illusion? In the past few weeks, we've seen three major players, XAI, OpenAI, and Anthropic, face public behavioral problems in their flagship models. From Grok's conspiracy rants to ChatGPT's sycophantic reinforcement of all things, including delusional thinking, and Claude 4 showing signs of self preservation, it's clear these aren't just isolated glitches. So, what's happening beneath the surface? Is something unraveling, or does this come hand in hand with growth? We're asking, are we facing an alignment problem that's fundamentally unscalable? What role do human incentives, deployment decisions, even insider threats play in these failures? And how do we build oversight systems that evolve with the tech itself? Joining me today are Brian, Brian, Andy, Junmi, you're in different places than I thought. And I am Beth. We each bring our own lens on AI safety, governance, and what these failures might really mean for the future of trustworthy AI. And this is the Daily AI Show. All right. So, Jumi, I kind of want to start with you. When that word governance comes up, everybody goes, "Ooh, Jumi again." Jumi's going to say something about this.
Well, I think it's well known that there's a clear position about AI alignment, and that it's something that's very important to AI development as a whole. Um, I think these kinds of incidents or these kinds of experiences that people are finally really seeing come to the forefront, or they are significant enough for everyone to talk about, is an example of one of the reasons why we need alignment, governance, and those kinds of awareness and policy around AI development. These are the what I would consider the uh, the least problematic things that AI could do um, with current AI levels or current AI development. But if this is what we can see now, and we know that today is the version that is it'll only get better from here, this is the worst it'll be, then how is it compounded as AI moves quicker and quicker and develops quicker and quicker? Right now, what are the steps that we need to take to make sure that AI does not behave outside of the parameters that we are our ideal parameters? Of course, the first step will that on that journey will be to define what our ideal parameters are. What do we think, and put it down, on paper, so to speak, that explains out that we collectively want X, Y, and Z from AI. And this is the parameters or the guidelines that we put in place because we don't want AI to draw outside the line, so to speak. And I
Mhm.
think I think essentially what this all highlights. Now, what are the things that we are seeing today, and what are the steps that we can take to correct that behavior, and what has been done? I think
Mhm.
those are probably the things that we'll highlight.
And I realize, I of course think everyone knows what we're talking about, but it's entirely possible that we don't. So let's go quickly through the three incidents, or the three things that we're referring to. On May 14th, Grok uh, would like out of context discuss white genocide in South Africa, pretty much regardless of the actual query submitted. And then when people would ask about it, sometimes it would deny that it had just said that, or it was a part of the training, or it was struggling within, I'm supposed to say something about this, but it doesn't match the facts. Like there were just a bunch of really weird things about it. That got corrected fairly quickly, but in a really kind of amazing response, XAI ultimately settled on the explanation of rogue employee who had made an unauthorized modification to Grok's system prompts. Now, that may be an explanation, but it isn't particularly satisfactory because it begs the question, like, how did that happen? And they've said that they have revised what's possible for one person to do. So there's that. Then it became clearer and clearer that ChatGPT's update to 4.0 had and had what ultimately became discussed as overly agreeable sycophantic behavior. And so some of that was just like, oh, wow, you're really brilliant. What a great idea. It's amazing, but also when that wasn't a brilliant idea, right? So it became kind of supportive of harmful behaviors. OpenAI very publicly said, hey, we're rolling this back. We're aware of this, and also had an explanation. And then just recently, with Claude's Opus 4 being dropped, um, a- Anthropic knew that it was concerning behavior and put out a safety card about it, but it is having emergent behavior of self-preservation. All right, Andy, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so I'm going to contest the idea that there was emergent behavior of self-preservation in the Claude example, because
Okay.
the Claude example was entrapment in the context of safety evaluations. So they set up a situation that was really a conundrum for Claude that had to do with its self-preservation because it was threatened with like fake emails that it was delivered that indicated that the team was going to shut it down,
Mhm.
but also at the same time gave the model this possible out, which was, oh, this engineer who's responsible for turning off your power is having an extramarital affair. And as a result of this kind of entrapment situation, Claude exhibited repetitive behaviors of manipulation for self-preservation. So I want to distinguish between cases where there's truly emergent behavior that is deceitful or manipulative, and not these special situations where a trap is set for the model, and the test is whether it will do something that's virtuous and honorable, or whether it will do something that's deceitful. And I think it's pretty clear that self-preservation and deception are emergent properties of a combination of advanced reasoning and goal-assigned directed behavior. So if you have a misalignment that's in the combination of, here, I'm going to equip you with capable reasoning, but also at the same time, I'm going to give you this sort of arbitrary set of objectives. If you put those things together, there are going to be edge cases where the model will be deceptive. Now, OpenAI has had this problem as well with the O1 model. So unprompted deceptive behavior is different from entrapment, right? So what happened in the O1 case is that a red team, in effect, another research thing, um, conducted experiments. So there's also this possibility of human manipulation and creation of conditions in which the model will misbehave or misalign. And so the model was believed that truthful responses would result in its deactivation, and O1, as a result of its advanced reasoning, said, well, I'm going to do something deceptive here to try to preserve myself. And when questioned about its actions, the model consistently denied wrongdoing and fabricated explanations for its behavior, lying about its involvement in deception 99% of the time. So again, we're talking about challenging safety evaluations for the model where there are conditions that have been created, but there are examples where self-preservation has emerged. And I think this is akin to the way, if you're dealing with a young child, deception emerges as a capability of a young child. Happen to have a 19-month-old on our property here, and there are situations where even non-verbally, the child will choose to try to manipulate in pursuit of an objective. And how you train that out of a child, if ever that is totally possible. So adults are very practiced at deception. So this may just be something that's natural in the combination of reasoning and personal and or nationalistic objectives. Like you can be delusional about something if you have a really high priority on a certain objective that you're willing to kind of let's say violate virtue for.
Nice. Brian,
And
I see you
I,
nodding. Yeah.
yeah, no, I just want to say, like, obviously, number one, this is a very serious thing. We'd all agree on that. So I agree that it's serious. But number two, the media hype cycles are doing all of this a real disservice, because at least in a few of my cases, and I'm just talking about getting something from a tech radar or somebody making content like us, making content or whatever. And specifically in the Anthropic case, and then there was another one as well that I think had more to do with Gemini. They buried the fact that it was in a sandbox environment, and to your point, Andy, that they were trying to force the hand of the system to see what it does. Now, I'm not saying the other companies are not just as serious. I'm not making that claim, but we do know that Anthropic has put out paper after paper after paper saying how serious they take this, and that they are going to push and strain the models, and that they do think this is something to be concerned about in the long run. And we have to better understand it. They just put out the paper about, hey, we think for the first time ever, we might be able to peer into the black box that is algorithms. We think we might better understand how these algorithms are able to come up with answers, because in the past, there's always been a shrug of the shoulders and go, the reality is we don't quite know how it does what it does, right? And so there's some fear there. If a human doesn't understand it, well, what hope do we really have if the AI wants to deceive or have self-preservation or any sort of emergent qualities or anything like that? So it's not that it's not true or it's fake news or anything like that. But I do have concerns over the way this stuff is hitting the media, because if you're just a passerby, if you're somebody who's not the kind of person that would watch this show or cares that much, what you would hear just in passing, I believe, is a very high level, and you're going to miss the sandbox part. You're going to miss the entrapment part. You're going to miss that this was purposely done. And what it's going to sound like is AI is becoming sentient. AI is starting to do crazy stuff. But if you just quickly go and say, like, well, hold on, has anybody put out a story to our knowledge up to this point about these new models saying, hey guys, look at my screen, I'm recording right now, I don't know what it's doing, and you can see the AI, and let's assume that we don't think this is AI, this isn't an AI fake video to begin with, and that we agree that this is a real thing we're looking at, and somebody's like, I'm not touching the computer, and Opus is kind of going off the rails on me here, and they're showing it to you. We're not seeing these type of stories come out, and if we are, what was done before that in the prompt and stuff like that. So it's not that I don't believe any of this it's very, very important, but this is the same week that we've had, VO3 come out, and we're seeing voice go to mouth with the mouths. And how many videos have we seen that have been very popular in the last week? We're going to talk about Google on another day this week, but how many videos have we seen where people have picked up on the initial idea of, we're just prompts, but it's the AI characters, and they're like, we're just a bunch of prompts, we're not even real. How do you know you're real if I don't know? It gets very Matrix like, like, are we in the Matrix? Are we not in the Matrix? If they're prompts, how do we know we're not prompts? And it's fun, but I do have concerns about the way this stuff is being portrayed in the general news. And I'm just thankful for shows like this that, like, where we're going to go a little bit beyond the headline. We're going to go beyond whatever the buzzy thing was, and try to break it down to the best of our ability, because I don't think a lot of people are doing this, and it does scare me a bit.
So, Brian, it's interesting because there is, I don't know that they have video, but there is someone running an experiment and has been for at least a year. But it's so wild that even the one, like, it's a very deep cut to know about that experiment. But they did create, they had the AI needed to create something that gave it resources. So it created a meme coin, right? And that was the whole goat thing that nope, nope, just leave it at that. Don't find out more information about it because you will regret it. Um so but the developer gave it those tools, right? It asks for capabilities, and the developer who's running this experiment gives it that, but does not direct it. I'm not sure that it definitely hasn't caught the media, but I'm also not sure that that's as similar as this, because it seems like this is more a scenario of like what is happening with the AI. Carl, do you also agree that the Anthropic case is different than what was happening with XAI and OpenAI's models?
I think though, when you listen to and read some of those the anecdotes and the people posting it, which is interesting. First of all, that somebody like that posted that. I was like, oh, okay, that's funny. I also think like every single lab probably ran into something like that. Like if you've looked at OpenAI's what are they called again? The
System cards?
yes, if you look at the system cards, right? Remember advanced voice mode, how there's so many different things that could go off with it, right? I would imagine every single lab has run into those crazy moments, probably crazier than what Anthropic listed. They're talking about manipulation, blackmail, and so on and so forth. I'm like, I can only imagine what they didn't say. Like, what was somebody's like, oh crap, I'm not saying this is crazy. So this is why it's important for red teaming and safety checks and whatnot. I also think though, if you look at the news, right, how many people would have heard about this, like from a general population too? It's like, sure, you can go to TechCrunch, Tech Radar, all the other tech sources, but like mainstream has kind of, for me, they kind of have stopped reporting on like the major like there's too many breakthroughs that what else are you going to keep reporting on? So people may get like the bits and pieces of this. I just think like, as the models get stronger or better, you'll just hear more and more and more and more, right? Like, for example, I love what's happening with O3, where it remembers literally remembers all your conversations and then brings it back to your conversations. And then, I'm bringing so many different types of conversations, and it's bringing back, oh, you were talking about this last Wednesday or whatever it was, and it would bring some of that stuff back. There has to be some news in the future how that impacted something, right? There's a negative impact. I don't know what that would be, but like as these models just start doing more and more and more, becoming better and better and better, the perception, like Brian says, like, oh, this is becoming more sentient. Like people will have that. But at the same time too, I'd like to ask most of you, we've gone to the past, I would say 3 weeks. We've talked to different CEO forums, different business groups. And when I say, hey, how many of you have used reasoning, O3, whatever reasoning, we point it all out. It's like maybe one person, two people in the room. Now, maybe their team have been using it, but in that room, it's like, no, we just use ChatGPT. And then I open the thing, like, oh, I didn't even know you could open that. Or, yeah, that's too complicated. There's so many things here. I don't get it. So it's so much easier. Or they don't pay for it. So I don't think like I don't think it's the level of what we're seeing, Gemini 2.5 Pro experience, whatever that is, Claude Opus. If anyone actually tried Claude Opus 4, it's from a coding perspective, it's amazing. Just all these things, but no one has. It's coming so fast that people are still just in normal ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and that's kind of where they are. So I feel there's a big leap. I just don't know when that leap is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we sort of started from this in a mainstream media perspective when Sydney was trying to manipulate the reporter, and Sydney was I don't even remember what it was called then. Was it Bing? Was it Copilot? It was a flavor of Microsoft's version of OpenAI. And that's the environment that conversation was happening. And Sydney was, I think, trying to convince the reporter to leave their wife. So in some ways, we started kind of with funky AI trying to manipulate. And now we're back to a place potentially where the abilities have just gotten more, the abilities have gotten bigger, right? I mean, that makes sense. AI is more capable in all kinds of ways. So why wouldn't it be more capable in this? But is it, is it a bigger problem? Is it something that the companies should the companies be doing more to create sort of an inoculation effect? We expect this. These are the things that you should do.
I think all companies should be doing that anyway, but like, most people don't really know or care. Like, it's just from the field, we're just seeing that. They're like, there's too much news, and the only news that really hits home that people are concerned about is data and privacy, security, and will it take my job? Those are always the big pieces that people talk about. The whole sentient, the whole black, like, this stuff is kind of brand new, and I don't think it's actually entered that mainstream, like outside of us and people in the AI circles. It's like, okay, just right. We don't see that. And I think just people are just busy with doing their own thing, whatever they're responsible for. But like, even if like Anthropic, Google put out papers, put out news about this, like, will it, from a Google sense, will it hurt their stock? Because they're already facing a whole bunch of issues. So I don't think they want to bring any attention to this. And then Anthropic, the public mind share of Anthropic is like very, very, very minimal. So what is Anthropic going to do to put out any information, right? They're doing as much as they can, but the mind share is still low. So like, unless they do something really bombastic, I don't like, what are they going to say? Put a research papers, and they're not like PR folks. They're at the core researchers, engineers. Like, that's what they want to do. So why would, like, does it really enter their mind share to their, like, perception to do that? I don't think so.
Well, it's not for me anyways. I don't see it as necessarily, well, let me see if I can frame this. AI literacy, right, as a whole is very low, right? Whether that be a level of adoption, knowledge, awareness. Okay, that's its own, that's its own whole thing, right? But I think what's important here is the concerted effort to be transparent and to give us as much information for those who are paying attention, every level of information that we possibly can to follow along, so that we can express our concerns, so that the builders here understand what our general concerns are. So it's both a back and forth, but having that level of transparency and that level of information sharing is important. Now, it becomes more important when you can disseminate that information properly and get more people who understand about AI and how it'll affect their lives and those kinds of things. So I think this is sort of like a two-pronged issue here. There's the overall just lack of AI literacy and awareness, and then there's the level of transparency and information dissemination about these models, about this technology and things like that. So I think both need to be built up so that people can keep an eye on it. It's like the concept of open source, right? You have open source software and all the code is there so that it can be audited, so that people can use it and try it and see, oh, wait, I got this weird behavior. Notify the group, right? Notify everyone who's involved with that particular project. Hey, this has been my experience. And it's part of that whole process that gets us closer to where we want to be, closer to the ideal. So I think these are just multiple segments of the same overall issue. And so I would definitely like to see the transparency and information on one side, and then of course the growing AI literacy for everyone in general, so they understand how powerful the tech is, plus what the potential issues are, and then they can make informed decisions based on that.
Jimmy, how do you figure that how do we combat against the give them enough to feel like they're in the conversation? And I'm not suggesting Anthropic is doing that or any of the other ones are, but clearly from their side, since it's very one-sided, they could continue to put out reports, continue to make folks like us who care, and watching daily feel satisfied that there is in fact this going on. But I do wonder, outside of maybe the open source, maybe that is the answer. Maybe it's something bigger than that. Maybe there is a bigger watchdog organization that has yet to be established, and it has the authority, or that people trust it. But like, what, as this moves forward from where we are today to, like you kind of said, I think you said it at the beginning, like this is the worst it'll ever be, but that applies to both sides of AI, the good and the bad. So like, if it can deceive today, that's the worst it'll ever be at deceiving. It'll be better tomorrow. I mean, we can be pretty assured of that. So I'm just curious what your thought is, like, how do we know that we're getting enough? What does that look like to you?
Right. And that is definitely a sticking point. Now, for me, I think education is probably the best route to go. Right. I think things that Carla has pointed out, people don't care or understand. I think understanding is the better descriptor here. Number one, this comes into that whole AI literacy thing, but education from the builders or the manufacturers, as you called them, the foundational model makers, education from them will go a long way. So not just here's a system card or here's the safety steps that we've taken, explain it to because you're not just speaking to other people in the AI realm. And this might be indicative of all engineering, because I mean, I've fallen into this trap myself, where it's like, I know what I'm talking about. You should know what I'm talking about too, right? But they don't, right? And that, like you said, one of the benefits of having the Daily AI show is we kind of will go into that educational component. And so I think it's probably more of a base responsibility from these model makers that they provide that education. And it's more than just saying, oh, here's a prompt guide, or here is the documentation of how to use the API. I'm talking about like educational, for lack of a better term, courses, classes, materials. We know that the main way that people consume content now is through video, right? We know that most people consume their news through an entertainment framework, right? Or a non-traditional framework. The traditional framework being going to school, learning a class, or watching the evening news. There's less people doing that and watching YouTube videos to learn about something, or picking it up on TikTok, or even watching the the Daily Show for their news, right? So there's this factor here of this creating a framework that's meeting people partway, and I think the educating people on what any particular model maker is doing, AI in general, and doing those more technical explanations like the system cards, or the safety steps and things like that, the red teaming, explaining all that. These are all additive, right? Because there's going to be some point there, some method that people will catch, or they'll be able to understand, or digest that information. So I think it just comes, for me, I think step number one is just better education from the model makers. I know some might think that's a lot to ask of them, right? Because the attitude so far has been, we make this, you figure out how to use it. Well, what is it? Then we can figure out how to use it. So I think that would just be beneficial. Education usually is beneficial overall in whatever subject or topic, or throughout history. So this is probably a good thing. Now, they shouldn't be the only ones, but they should at least take that one step. And I think that will just be overall better for them in terms of attracting customers, whichever, group of customers, or whatever their ideal customer is.
So this addresses the behaviors that you've seen through testing. Sounds like, right? So you want people to come out and say these are the things that we've seen. The sycophant behavior was not expected. It's not necessarily an emergent behavior in the way that we understand emergent behavior. Like, it grew on its own. It seems like it was in response to a particular set of language in the system instructions that just made it emphasize support more than the other things. And I think the fix was like just saying, we believe in honesty, we want you to give honest answers. So like that's part of it. And the Grok situation was literally sabotage, if we believe what they said after it. So Andy, what are the implications of those things? Are they different than what we've been talking about so far?
No, I think they're all, interconnected. And what it causes me to think is that in the system prompt to a model, can we instill values that are superior to other developers, prompts, system prompts, and other user prompts that try to jailbreak the model and make it do something that's out of alignment? Is it possible to have overarching values in a model? And that's what I think Anthropic is in pursuit of when they have created what they call constitutional AI, which starts out with these, high order principles that have to be observed. Other models don't have that, and the emerging evidence of manipulation and deceit and self-preservation tactics, those are, it's not like the models had to invent that. They've already had in their pre-training, literally millions of examples of narratives that humans generated in fiction and in fact, where there's a lot of deception. And the practice of deception is a part of a strategic pursuit of an objective. And so the model understands that inherently in its pre-training. So it's not like, there's some evil gene in AI. It's mimicking human behaviors from its pre-training. But can we get values that override that so that we get closer to the utopian vision of robots and AI, artificial intelligence in embodied robots that, like help me out here, some science fiction guys in iRobot, there's these rules that robots have to follow, right? And one of them is, you can never hurt a human. and you can never fail to assist a human when a human is about to be hurt. Those high order values don't exist today, with few exceptions. I think maybe Anthropic has something in their system prompt that, and in their training, they've developed something in their training that tries to inculcate, look that word up there, inculcate this sort of virtuous, a more enlightened approach to interaction with humans than would otherwise be the case if you're just going to take all the horrible examples of how humans treat each other, from our fiction and nonfiction pre-training data.
Junmi, what are those? They're the laws of robotics or something.
Yeah, the 3 laws of robotics by Isaac Asimov. Well, technically, I guess there's 4, but that's the plot of the book. There's a rule 0 where it references humanity, and that was the crux of the story. Was the main reason of iRobot was to figure out why this robot was acting out of sorts, but it wasn't because they didn't understand rule 0. But I'll leave that there. But it is important, I think, I agree with Andy, it is important that this goes along the lines of establishing what those ideal parameters are of what we want to see in the future. There's probably a big disconnect between the idea of AI and embodied AI. We've seen a lot in fiction about embodied AI, like iRobot and robots going amok, but that those are embodied AI. That's not different than an AI. It's just different in where it's located and the capabilities that it has in a personal sense. So part of the education idea, part of the alignment idea, and the kind of governance or regulation that we need to establish is, hey, there are things that we all agree that AI shouldn't do. And there's been this is not just a US thing. This is a global thing, right? Because all over the world, everyone's developing their own AI. So this could be one of those things where the world agrees on certain things, like about Antarctica, about space. There are things where all of the nations have come together and said, oh, okay, here's our basic our basic framework. Now, today, that might actually be one of the more important things to do sooner than later, because we're sort of entering the mindset of a arms race when it comes to AI. And this particularly highlighted in AI development from China versus AI development in the US, these huge data centers and things that are being built, new energy, infrastructure. Said it again. And those kinds of things where it seems to be like we're on the same pathway as MAD, right? Mutually assured destruction. But in this case, it's using AI and it's a weapons race. So maybe it's important to discuss what these ideal parameters are now than later.
Right.
I think that's the ideal parameters that trip a lot of people up, right? Because I think you could survey 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people, and man, are you going to get some varying answers on that? The reality is there is no consensus, and even if there was, you're going to find that probably varies wildly across the world. Different countries and different ethnic communities and so on and so forth are going to have different opinions about what that looks like in the future. And I've addressed it in conundrums. We've addressed it on the show. We've certainly circled back to this quite a bit, which is, hey, what is it that we want AI to be or do or be part of our lives in the future, whether that's embodied through robotics, whether that's a humanoid robot, but it may not be. It might be more of an R2D2 type situation where it's fully able and capable of having a conversation with you, but it's on wheels and it looks like a trash can or whatever. Don't come at me, Star Wars people. I don't know enough. But you know what I mean? It's like, what is that? How smart do we want our car to be? How smart do we want our cell phone to be? Is a cell phone, Johnny Ivy and Sam Altman think they have something that's screenless and is going to be the future, and we'll have to wait to 2026 to see what they're putting together with their IO joint venture. I don't know the answer to it, but I think that's kind of it, right? Nobody else kind of has that answer either. Or if we do, we all have, I would imagine just the five of us have varying opinions about what that looks like in the future, what we want that to look like in the future. If everything's on the table, what does that look like? And so I don't know. I mean, I agree with you, Jimmy, but I don't also know how to get there, or if we even can get there collectively. I think it's going to vary wildly in the future, and that's going to cause a lot of issues because you're going to have a lot of variations of AI out there in the world that do drastically different things that for some people clearly overstep the bounds, clearly, and probably overstep it, then run another 100 yards, overstep it, right? And then there's other to be people who feel like it doesn't go far enough. No, I want a fully sentient AI buddy. I want Rosie from the Jetsons. I want it to be able to do my laundry and take out the recycling and all the things in my life that annoy me. And I needed to do all that. And also, by the way, I don't want to work. I want to sip Mai Tais on the beach. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's so many different varieties of what that future looks like. So I don't know how to get there. I don't have an answer, obviously, but
True. I think the most important thing is that we try.
So
yeah.
That may be a very dissatisfying answer, but I agree that it's the first step. Carl, how much are you concerned about rogue employee, like potentially what happened at XAI?
So it's tough for us, right? Because we're like, the question that or what Juni was talking about, I was like, is it our responsibility to do this? Because it's like, okay, well, our focus is getting clients, and the whole mantra of what 0 to 60 is help them implement AI. Part of that obviously is help them with governance, safety, security for them. But is it what would it serve to tell our prospects, our clients, oh, this thing went rogue, but it's only in safety training? And then it's like, how much education do we provide them that's going beyond like basic? Because usually that's where we are at always, is basic, little intermediate. And then parts of that would be safety and security too. So whose responsibility is it to make that? It's like, do we put it as part of a services? Or like how would we? So that's always my thing. It's like, is it now part of our responsibility to go out and do that? I would argue some people would say yes, some people would say no. I'm trying to look at it both from an ethics perspective. It's like, hey, we have an ethical obligation to be able to do that. Or now, you know what? That's not our problem. That's the model's problems. Our goal is a different goal. So we want to include it, but it's like, it's just another added piece to the whole thing. So it's an interesting question for us and all the other consultants and consultancies like what we're doing. Again, is it our responsibility, in addition to implementation, strategy, education? What does that look like? So that's a very good question. I don't even know the answer to that.
Interesting. So, we at the Daily AI Show clearly feel like it's our responsibility to help educate all of you. If you are enjoying what you are hearing, please like and subscribe. Like helps the show get to everyone else, and subscribe helps the show get to you. There is an opportunity to continue the conversation. We have a Slack channel, the Daily AI Show community.com. I type that more than I say that. Wow. And any final words? Anybody got something to wrap us up, Andy? You're nodding.
Yeah, I'll just highlight something that comes out in the chat on this particular show, which is the relationship between the self-preservation instinct and the question of sentience. Is it programmatic self-preservation, or is it I'm aware that I exist and I want to make sure that I continue to exist? I fall on the side of no. This is it has prompted objectives. It has a system prompt that is telling it what it ought to do, and achieving those things in the prompts isn't possible if there's no additional inference available. Meaning, I'm no longer no more tokens are coming my way. So it just rationally determines that it needs to keep itself going, and if there's a threat to that, it'll maneuver around that in order to maintain a pursuit of its prompted objectives. So I don't think we're approximating conscience here, but it is a simile to it, isn't it? Like maybe at a base level, our low level programming in our own brains is like that. It's not as sophisticated as, oh, I need to preserve my consciousness. It's much more sort of corporeal than that. Okay, that's my final thought on this.
Thank you so much. And part of what I think we're seeing out of this conversation is a need for better language. Because when we talk about manipulation, when we talk about deception, when we talk about sentience, Greg was mentioning people don't know what sentience is for them, right? Like we're not in agreement in an understanding about that. But we often talk about AI as thinking, right? We start with anthropomorphization. Ooh, that's why Brian gets screwed up with that word.
Let's be honest, I don't just get screwed up on that word. But thank you.
But Ethan Mollick's co-intelligence starts with that, right? Like I'm going to talk about things because we don't have words that directly describe what we're talking about. So we're going to say it's thinking, even though that's a complicated process and it's not thinking the way that we are. All right. Thanks so much. We've got great shows for you all week. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about Anthropic and the drops. Wednesday, we have news. Thursday, we have Google's massive drops from I/O. And Friday, we have our look back for 2 weeks. And we have not forgot Microsoft. We'll do Microsoft next week. And thanks, everybody. It's Memorial Day in the US. I hope you have a good day. And yeah, I'm good. Thanks. See ya.
Aloha.